Let me take you to the events where the season was suspended between the Jazz and the Thunder, this game being played in Oklahoma City, or scheduled to be played. That's Chris Paul and the Thunder. They were scheduled to start. Tip was scheduled for just after 8 o'clock Eastern time. At 8:10, seconds before the ball was to be thrown in the air, you saw Chris Paul asking the Jazz bench where Rudy Gobert was and if he was sick. Gobert was not at the arena after feeling ill. And then just 4 minutes later, this announcement was made.
Tonight has been postponed. You are all safe. And take your time in leaving the arena tonight and do so in an orderly fashion. Thank you for coming out tonight. We are all safe.
Despite the understandable frustration that you heard in the initial reaction from the fans did leave in an orderly fashion. There did not seem to be any issues there. And as they did, with the word that Rudy Gobert had tested positive for the coronavirus, the court was roped off, workers spraying down seats. The Thunder players were allowed to leave the arena about 2 hours later. It was 5 hours after 2:10 in the morning when the Utah players finally left the arena. At 9:30 Eastern last night, the NBA released a statement. Quote, the NBA announced that a player on the Utah Jazz has preliminarily tested positive for COVID-19. The test result was reported shortly prior to the tip-off of tonight's game between the Jazz and the Oklahoma City Thunder at Chesapeake Energy Arena. At that time, tonight's game was canceled. The affected player was not in the arena. The NBA is suspending gameplay following the conclusion of tonight's schedule of games until further notice. The NBA will use this hiatus to determine next steps for moving forward in regard to the coronavirus pandemic. And we'll begin our coverage with Adrian Wojnarowski and Brian Windhorst, who are here, our NBA insiders. And Woj, I will start with you. How did the league arrive at this decision last night?
Well, once Rudy Gobert had tested positive, and you knew at the very least you had a team in the Utah Jazz now that was going to have to be in self-containment, you can't play a schedule. And they knew that there were going to be players in other teams who had competed against him who had to be tested. And just hours before, Greeny, Adam Silver had been on a conference call with the Board of Governors, essentially his owners, and they had largely come to a consensus that the way they would proceed would be to continue playing games, but do so without fans. And that's what I was told Adam Silver was likely going to announce today. But that all changed with Rudy Gobert's positive test. Almost immediately, Adam Silver made the decision to suspend play. And that's where the league is, as of this morning, on hiatus.
And Wendy, you had told us yesterday here that this was the reason for removing the fans from the arena. This was the reason for keeping the media out of the locker room, because they knew that once any player did test positive, that this would be the result.
Yeah, and I think the league was in a little bit of denial here. We saw statements out of Cleveland where they said, no, we have great air exchangers and we can purify the air. Yesterday, we saw the D.C. mayor call for no major gatherings, and the Wizards put out a statement saying, no, we're going to still do it. But I will say the NBA was ahead on something. They had advised their teams within the last week to set up procedures to get coronavirus testing. We saw Steph Curry get the flu last week. He got a coronavirus test and was cleared on Saturday. And because those provisions were in place, when Gobert tested negative for influenza A, they were able to get him a coronavirus test, and they were able to get the result back fast enough to stop the game. And now, one of the things that's going to happen in the league today, you mentioned the teams that the Jazz played, but the teams that the Jazz played that played other teams, the officials, the entire league last night was shaken. But because they were able to have those procedures in place, we now have done what we needed to do, which is to stop playing. And that is a good thing. I know it feels bad and it feels scary, but it is the correct thing to do, and it's a positive thing going forward.
And thus, then we try and spin it forward, Woj, as best we can, because we all understand that we're in an area of great unknown. But what is the league's plan from here?
Well, that was the question teams were really slamming the league office with last night, and they were told, just sit tight, let us get through the night, and we'll have some more direction for you tomorrow. The league's been working on a number of contingencies for weeks now in the event that this happened. And there were plenty of teams that I talked to in the last week to 10 days who believed that this was going to happen, that there would be a stoppage in play, that games would be missed, that it was inevitable. And while the league hoped that they could continue and do so without fans, they were prepared for this possibility. So what you're seeing now and what you're going to see is going to have to be a lot of cooperation among teams. This is a league, when you just look at this from a financial standpoint, owners have lost a lot of money this year based on the fractured relationship in China, and they're going to lose significantly more money, and the players are going to lose money because they share in the revenue. And so there's going to be a hit on all sides. And so what is going to happen now and what has already started to happen is, first trying to get a sense, and they're not going to know when, they don't know today when they can start playing again. But what are the playoffs going to look like? Are they going to have to move the season into the summer? Are they going to have to delay the start of next season based on when this season could possibly end? Those are all the conversations that are going on, and they're not going to have a clear answer until they know when it is safe again to be able to put players and organizations back to work.
I think it is safe to suggest that we are closer to the beginning of this process than we are to the end. Woj, thank you very much. Wendy, sit tight. I have a lot more for you as we continue, but we need to get to the medical piece of this. Laura.
Yeah, as Woj reported yesterday, Jazz center Rudy Gobert tested positive for coronavirus on Monday. You see it right there. After speaking with the media, Gobert purposefully touched reporter microphones and recorders before leaving the podium table. So just to show the impact of Gobert's positive COVID-19 test, the Jazz have played 6 games in March, all in different cities: Cleveland, New York, Boston, Detroit, Salt Lake City, and Oklahoma City. If you factor in the teams they played and then the subsequent teams they played, all 30 teams have come in contact with someone who played with or against Rudy Gobert.